of Freilich and Chanukah. This is Gemara Nedarim Daf Nun Tes. Today's shir has been generously sponsored by a very close friend of the Daf as a schos alias neshama for Penina Bas or Avdaiv Ber B'siyat Dishmaya, as we learn through these difficult and yisaidistic dafim of Nedarim. Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, each word learned by each one of this incredible worldwide chabura, which I'm astounded, Baruch Hashem, by the numbers and the sheer extravagance of Talmud Torah that we're learning together, should bring Penina Bas Rav Daiver to higher in place in Gan Eden Shalmaila, closer to the Kisei HaKavod, and of course be a militation for her entire family and the entire Daf Yomi Chevra as well. So holding on the bottom of Nun Ches Amid Beis. And we finished off with the statement of Rav Yitzchak that Shani Shviyas Hol V'Yisur Dei Karka B'Tilta Nami Al Dei Karka. Now I want to just add on one dot, that the kasha of the Gemara was that this should be a tiyufta to Rav Yochanan and Rav Yonasan, and the answer was Shemitah is different. And when I explained this, I think I was a dot misleading, maybe more than a dot, is which case is Shemitah and which case is not. So we pointed out that one case is Shemitah and the other case is Arla, Klaya Kerem, etc. Arla Klaya Kerem is the din of Rav Yochanan and Rav Yonasan. They, way back when the sugya began with Afnun Zayin and Beis, spoke about Arla and Klaya Kerem. Our brisa that we quoted on the top of this Amid was discussing Shemitah. So the Gemara is explaining you can't ask on Rav Yochanan and Rav Yonasan with regard to Shemitah with regard to Klaya Kerem and Arla from Shemitah, because Shemitah is different. Why is Shemitah different? Because Shemitah comes from the Karka, and since it comes from the Karka, it's Batal Al Yedei Karka. Now, before we really dive into today's daf, we must remind ourselves where we're holding. This has been quite a long sugya, so we're going to sneak back all the way back to Daf Nun Zayin and Beis, where this sugya began, and we highlight once again in Nun Zayin and Beis that this is all back to a question of Yishmael Ish Kfar Yama. Some say Ish Kfar Di Yama. That what was the case? His case was an onion that was rooted. It was a Shemitah onion, meaning it was forbidden, and then it's replanted in Sheminis in the 8th year, which is of course mutter. In the 8th year, it has excessive growth, and the question is either, according to the Ran, excuse me, what is the status of the 8th year growth? Fitais in the Rush, is this permissible 8th year growth? They take on Pashut, it's permissible. Is this permissible 8th year growth batal and nullify the Isser of the onion? And as we saw in yesterday's Daf and Daf Nun Ches, there's a few critical answers. We had one answer that if it's a Chumrah, you can't bring a proof. We had another answer. We got involved very heavily in Davar She'ish Lo Matirin, Davar She'ein Lo Matirin. We had another answer that if the onion is crushed up, then as well you can't bring a proof from there. Why not? Because if the onion is crushed up, maybe that's the reason why it's batel. That's why it's nullified, because it's not a davar chashav. Whereas in the case of Yishmael Ish Kfar Yama, Ish Kfar Di Yama, the onion is not cut up, and therefore maybe over there will not be nullified. And we finally concluded, and this is where we're holding right now, in Chesem and Beis, with Rav Yitzchak Nafcha teaching us that Shemitah is different. Why? Shemitah is different because it comes from the Karka, it's Batal Yedei Karka. So now we're sort of just to, again, finish up the math where we're holding, and I know this has been a lengthy introduction, this is a long sugya. We're sort of holding in part 2 of this sugya, because we already answered the kasha. We already came along at the top of this Amud Beis and in Chesem Beis, and we already explained that the 8th year is going to, yes, be mevatel. Therefore, it was a kasha on Rav Yochanan and Rav Yonasan, who said it's aser. We answered up that kasha. So we're now sort of dealing with part B of the sugya, which are the Amoraim, who on Daf Nun Zayin and Beis weighed in on this Shaila. Rav Yechon and Rav Yehuda's son is first, and the moment we're going to get to Rav Yanai. So now the Gemara answered that according to Rav Yechon and Rav Yehuda's son, what's going on over here is batal al yidei karka, because Shemitah comes from the karka. Asks the Gemara, 6 lines from the bottom. The answer of the Gemara was that Shemitah is different. Why is Shemitah different? Because it comes from the karka. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Meiser as well comes from the karka, and yet it's not batal via the karka. How do I know this? Titania, as we quote a brisa 4 lines from the bottom, litra, meiser, tevel. We have a liter, literally. A litra, a measurement of meiser, which is a tevel, which you did not take off the promi yechuma. He said meiser's meiser rishon has not been taken off. That watches zara bekarka, that's replanted. So you have forbidden tevel meiser that's replanted v'shbicha. And what happens when it's replanted? It regrows during Shemitah. So now it grows during Shemitah. Now, we have to remind ourselves, and anyone who lived in Eretz Yisrael this last year is proficient with this halacha. We mentioned this in previous dafim, that which grows on Shemitah has no din of Chumas and Meisers. Why not? The answer is because it's hefker. And since it's hefker, there's no din to think of Chumas and Meisers because it's a hefker entity. What do you think of Chumas and Meisers? It's not yours. You're going to give a tenth of the coin to the Levi. What are you doing? It's not yours. It's God's. It's everyone's. It's hefker. So says the Gemara, if I have this litra meiser of tevel that's replanted, it's a shbicha, it flourishes during Shemitah. What's the halacha? Rehi ke'eser litrin, and then it grows from 1 litra to 10 liter, 9 more. Chayeves b'meiser b'shvis. The halacha is, it's now chayiv in meiser based on the original litra, which was tevel u'b'shvius, and it's Shemitah, that which grew right now. V'oisa litra meiser alei mimakam acher lefi cheshbon, and you're not allowed to take off meiser from it itself, because it itself is now Shemitah produce, is now hefker, and you remove the meiser mimakam acher lefi cheshbon. So what do we see? Asks the Gemara. You, Rav Yitzchak, just answered that Shemitah is different because it comes from the ground. It's mavatal from the ground, but Truma also comes from the ground, and yet it's not mavatal from the ground. Continues the Gemara on, Nun Tesam and Aleph. Where's our page of Shas? Here we go. Continues the Gemara on Nun Tesam and Aleph. Continues the Gemara on Nun Tesam Aleph. 1 second. Here we go. I'm sorry. Here we go. Continues the Gemara on Nun Tesam Aleph. Amri answers the Gemara. Amri Meiser Digoin. Who says the Gemara? Meiser Digoin Udika Garim Le. You're asking for a Meiser. You cannot ask for a Meiser. Why can you not ask for a Meiser? The reason it being is because Meiser is different. Because Meiser, it's true, it grows from the ground. But Meiser is Digoin. This reminds us of that which we learned a few days ago that has to do with the pile. Meiser is dependent upon the pile. That's what has to do with Meiser, and that's why it's not a question on Rav Yitzchak who answered that Shemitah has to do with the karka. Continues the Gemara on the top line of Nun Tesam and Aleph. Masiv Rami Bar Chama. So we now defended whom? Rav Yochanan and Rav Yehuda's son. So now we have to reorient ourselves with that Gemara back on Zion from 3 days ago. The Gemara there had a different Amayra. His name was Rav Yanai. And now the Gemara is asking on Rav Yanai who held on Zion and Beis. He was the first shita that we quoted, that in the case of the Batzal Shel Truma that was planted and then it grows and it has more growth than the original, Rav Yanai held it's all mutter. So Masiv Rabbi Bar Chama, Kainam Beiros Eilu Alive, so it makes a neder. And finally, we come all the way back to our case of Kainam Beiros Eilu Alive, and this is why this entire sugya came for this beautiful question. Kainam Beiros Eilu Alive, these fruits are kainam to me, or kainam ALP to the mouth, kainam lifi to my mouth. Hopefully, we'll remember this was the Mishnah Daf Nun Zayin. Says the Gemara, quoting the Mishnah, Asar bichilufeim ubiguduleim. The exchange of them, that which grows from them, are forbidden. Whereas if he says, Shani oichav, shani toye, mutter bichilufeim ubiguduleim, then it's mutter. And what is this referring to? Explain the Mishnah. B'davar shezaroi kala. Specifically, only something in which the zera, the seed, is kala, decomposed and is no longer around. Avol, 6 lines down, if the seed decomposes, then afilu giduleim, ein zarai kala, opposite, pardon. If the seed does not decompose, the seed is intact, which of course is comparable to our case of the onion. An onion is a bulb, as we've explained, which does not get decomposed. Afilu giduleim asurin. They're all asur. So says the Gemara, Rav Yanai held that when something grows out of it, out of the onion, ein zarai kala, the seed is still here. Rav Yanai held it's all mutter. Rav Yanai held that which comes from it is mevatel, the entity itself. But what's going on? We see from our Mishnah, not that way. Amar Rav Abba, shiny koinamois. You're asking from koinam. You just had 2.5 blot to get to this point. To get to the point that Rishmal Ishta Yama Ishkvardi Yama had a whole thing about an onion, and we had opinion of Rav Yana and Rav Yechon and Rav Yonis, and we had a whole shtickle tire to answer up. And now we come full circle around, trying to ask on Rav Yana from our Mishnah. Says Rav Abba, this whole thing had nothing to do with Nedarim. Shiny Kainamois. Kainamois are different because you're able to be shoyal. You're able to annul your neder, and therefore havelu kedavar sheyesh loy ma'atirin ve'ein batel beroiv. Therefore, kainamais are different. Meaning, Rav Yana, who said it's batel beroiv, could be correct, but this case is different. Why is this case different? The reason being is because since it's something that could be shoyal on, it's like a davar sheish lo matirin, as we explained yesterday, saying that it could become permitted, and therefore it's never batal and certainly not a biroiv. Asks the Gemara on this isolated din. V'harei truma dibai mishalallah. Truma you also can be shoyal on. You can undo truma bali biroiv, and yes, it's batal biroiv. It's not learned in the Mishnah. So truma tamei hajnavelu lebachuz mi meya chulin. We have a saw of Truma Temeya that falls into a bit less than Meya of Truma Mimeya Chulin, of Chulin. What is the halacha? Teira Keif. The halacha is you have to leave it to rat. Holim Meya. But let's say it was actually into 100, then Tala. Then the halacha is, yes, is nullified. So even though Truma, you also could be shayal on. You also could annul Truma. Yeah, we see it's batal. Answers the Gemara, Amri, Truma, biad koyin, askinaz lo matzil mishalallah. When you're able to be shayla on Truma, only before it gets to the Kayin. Once it gets to the Kayin, you can't be shayla on it. So therefore says the Gemara, that's what this Mishnah is talking about. Ask the Gemara, Yachi, if that's a Seifa Maisa Tahira. But the Seifa says if it's Tar, the Tom in the case of the Truma, Timakar LeKayin. So what do we see? We see clearly that it's not talking about a case before it gets to the Kayin, when it gets to the Kayin already has it. Elo, so says I'll tell you another case you can't be shayl on the truma. Be Yisrael shenaflo mibeis aviyimai kayin. Concept that we've seen many times. If we have a Yisrael that gets truma, where does this Yisrael get truma from? His grandfather, his mother's father, who was a kayin, askinan, and therefore we have truma that's owned by a Yisrael, even though it was not given, but it cannot be shayled upon. Asks the Gemara another technical question. Vaktani sevati marker lekayin. So says the Gemara, the Sefer says, it says you can sell to a kohen chutz midmei oisasa. But if the whole case is that you got this truma, from where? From your mother's father who was a kohen, then every part of it you're able to sell. Ela ema, says the Gemara, a new teretz bishlam a kohen namais. So now, We're back to our original question. Again, we asked on Rav Yanai from our Mishnah. We answered Rav Yanai that you can't ask from the Mishnah. Why not? Because the case of the Mishnah is kainamais. In the case of kainamais, it's different. Why is it different? Because you could be shayil. You could undo a neder, and therefore it's davar sheyesh lamatirin, and therefore it's not going to be batal. We had a problem. What about truma? Is also davar sheyesh lamatirin. Also, you could be shayil upon, and yet it's not. It's yes batal. So answers the Gemara. A new chilik between Nedarim and Truma. Kainamais mitzvah latshule aleihen. It's a mitzvah to get rid of Nedarim. Why is it a mitzvah to get rid of Nedarim? So now we've seen already. Misham der anasan damer anasan kol anayder kilu banabama. If you made a neder, if you built a mizbeach, v'makayma, and if you fulfill your neder kilu makter aleha. Truma is if you brought upon it a carbon which you're not allowed to do. So says the Gemara. Makarev kilu makter aleha, and whereas truma, my mitzvah shuli Allah. Whereas it comes to truma, there's no mitzvah to undo it, and that's going to be the fundamental difference. So in reality, the sugya ends here. It doesn't really end. We're only halfway through the daf, and now we're going to go and we're going to dive deeply into isolated parts of the sugya that we just had. But the larger sugya that began on Nun Zayin Amud Beis, that began with Shmuel Ish Kfar Yama or Ish Kfar Diyam, in the case of the onion that was planted and whether the offshoots are Bevatel, the original entity, we came all the way around that Rav Yanai held it was mutter. What did Rav Yanai do with our Mishnah? We finally answered that Rav Yanai is not a question from our Mishnah. Why not? Because Omar Rav Abba Shiny Kainama is able to be shayil on they, and therefore Tavar Sheish Matirin, and that's why in the Mishnah it's not batal. Whereas in the case of Rav Yanai, it will yes be batal. We then had a problem. So where does the Mishnah answer up for Truma? Truma can yes be shayil upon it, and yes we know Truma is yes batal. So we're finally answering. There's a fundamental difference between Nedarim. We're learning Nedarim, by the way, in case we forgot. There's a difference in Nedarim and everything else, because Nedarim it's a mitzvah to be shayil upon, because you never want to have a neder. So now concludes the Gemara, 7 lines to the bottom of the Testament Aleph Kufa. Let's go a bit back into something that we spoke about a few moments ago. Omar Rav Yochanan litra b'salim shetikna v'zara misasros lafi kula. We said we have a litra of b'salim that you're tikna, that you fixed it by taking off the appropriate trumas and maestris, and then it's replanted. Misasros lafi kula. You have to take a meister according to everything. Originally it was tavel, it was planted, it grew more. Now you have to take a meister from even the beginning of it. Says the Gemara. And in truth, this is not the case that we just quoted a moment ago. This is Rav Yochanan all the way back from Nun Zayin Amud Beis. So again, we have these bitzalim that you took off Trumas HaMaisers, then you planted it. Not the case that I just said. Misasros lefi kula. You have to take a meister according to the entirety of the item, meaning including what? Including the part that you already were mitaking. So Yosef Rabba, V'ka'amr la Shemaita Rabba is sitting 4 lines to the bottom and sitting over the Shemaita. Amali Rav Chisda says Rav Chisda, Man Sais le Rav Yochanan, Man Sais lecha. Who will listen to you? Well, Rav Yochanan Rabba and Rav Yochanan Rabbi Heter shebehen lehechan halach. The heter, the original entity, which was mutter, this litra that you already were metaking, where to go? Why are you now having to think of Trumas HaMaisers Kineged Kula? Amar lei. So Rabbah said back to Rav Chisda, Miloi Tanan, did we not learn the Kavasah similar to this in a Mishnah, that Bitzalim, that when we have onions, we quoted this yesterday in Daf Nun Ches. Shiardu alei geshamim, that it rains upon them. The simcha and the onions sprout. As we move over to Nun Tes Amid Beis, so we have these onions that sprouted im haya'alin. Said the Bryce over there on Daf Nun Ches Amid Aleph. Im haya'alin shalen shchayrim. If the leaves were black, which we explained doesn't really mean black. What does it mean that the leaves were black? It means that the leaves were healthy. It means that they have vitality to them. Asurin, hayriku, whereas if the leaves were not black, if they are pale, then mutarin. So now we articulate, if they're black, if they're stark, if they grew well, why is it forbidden? Why don't we say, wait, where did the heter go? This was originally a kosher entity. It was an entity that you already fixed. So says the Gemara, Amar Lei, Rav Chisda says back, 3 lines down in Testament base, Mi Sabris al Iker Katani, Ataisefes Katani. We're not talking about the Iker, the root, we're talking about only the Taisefes Katani Asurin. Iochi asked the Gemara, Mai Azar Ashbag Lemeimar. What is the Chiddush of Rav Shimon Gamliel? The Tanya of Shimon Gamliel, Amar Agodo B'chiyav, Chayav Agodo B'tur Pater. Says the Gemara, no big deal. Tanakama nami hachi amar kulam asnita Rav Shimon Gamliel katani la. You know what it is? It's telling me that the whole Mishnah is Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. So says the Gemara, okay. Vad kan lo sham zed Rashbag delukatarach. When did Rav Shimon Gamliel say this din that when this batzel, when this entity grows, it does not change the original root into something that's aser? When did Rashbag say that? When is the Mishnah going like him? Only deloi katarach. You did not expend effort. You didn't go and proactively replant it. Avol hecha de katarach batal biruba. Well, yes, be batal. So again, just to remind yourselves, we're on a bit of a tangent right now, trying to wrap up loose ends, figuring out when I had something that was mitukan, that was fixed, and then it resprouted and regrow, whether now when you have to fix it, you have to take in consideration the original entity or not. So says the Gemara of Chalecha, with this we're going to conclude for today. Chalecha de katarach batal beruba. Is that a real rule that you just taught me? That whenever you expend effort to replant an entity, it's batal beroiv, ari litra meiser tevel. The katar v'ktani oisel litra meiser. Allah m'makamach levi cheshbon. This is the brace that we quoted today. That it was tevel, it was planted, and we said what? You still have to take it into consideration when you take off the new trumas and meisers. Why? You just told me a cloud that if you're tarach, if you go and plant it, then it should yes be mavatel. And we conclude, says the Gemara, Shani Gabi Meiser, the Amar Kra, Aser te Aser, Vatera Zari Inshi, Bisura Loi Zari Inshi. And therefore, of course, the Torah says Aser te Aser and Devarim. What is this extra Aser? Of course, we know this Aser Bishvil, Shut this Aser. This is the very famous Marmaka in that when one gives tzedakah, one gives Meiser, he becomes te Asher, he could become wealthy. But over here it can teach me that you have to take off Meiser even if it was already Gemeiser and you're ready to go off Meiser. You have to take it off again. Now this is only on items that are normally, why? Because normally permitted produce you're going to plant, but not forbidden produce. We'll pick it up from the Gufa tomorrow as we will be concluding this Parek B'siyata Dishmaya.